This is general advice and my opinions only. CFDs are high risk, past performance isn't reliable. I may be long or short CFDs and stocks mentioned. Content may contain language that offends some viewers. LEVRD operates as corporate authorised representative 001318377 under AFSL 548573. You can find our financial services guide via the LEVRD website link in the show notes.
Righto, bag holders and stop-loss owners, we're going to the desk. We're going to the desk to see what's happening. Our faithful desk guy, bloody Bradley Seward, GBA, Capital, pretty much the boss of it now. What's going on, Cobb?
Definitely not the boss of it, but far out, mate. It feels like we're sort of in for a wild ride. I was thinking, earlier this week, late last week, that, things had sort of calmed down, but Trump doesn't want to give us a break, does he, Matt?
Oh, but bloody markets, I woke up, gold was 46.50 and now has recovered back to 47.60 today. And like pretty much all the equities open shit. And then everything's recovered today. It's friggin' it is. You can give me your take, but it's like the market's just accepting that this strait might remain closed and US is going to just sell a heap more oil and things are going to go on. How are you seeing it?
It doesn't. Yeah, it feels like people have kind of moved past it. Definitely. I think you see that in when we initially talked. I remember at the start of this conflict, said we'd see a sort of month of very little ECM activity, and it feels like we're kind of getting back to a bit more normalcy and people being able to get deals done. So, I think, we're sort of talking internally about a few more ECM transactions, and, my broker mates are talking about the same thing as well. It sounds like there was a conference up in Hong Kong and in Singapore, Hong Kong last week, Singapore this week. Sounds like it was really well attended, and people are looking now to put money to work again after getting a little bit more certainty on exactly what's going to happen. But geez, I tell you what, the one thing that's maybe not structurally changed, but it's definitely changed in the immediate term is the lithium price. $2,600 a ton out free on board from WA, mate. It's that is bloody expensive for SC6.
Yeah.
It wasn't not even 6 months ago. We're talking about $1,100 being a really good price. It's just now $2,600.
Yeah, and I think I think we talked about it. Oh, maybe with another desk guy, but it was like on the back of this, you'd think this was playing the EV play. Look at Tesla. Tesla's gone up bloody 20% in a week, nearly. It made sense.
There's so many of these companies sit down and, like, anecdotally you hear, kind of a massive amount of, new demand. I spoke to a bloke on Monday night who runs a used car dealership.
Trustworthy fella.
Absolutely.
There's a fucking few of them living in Cottesloe too that are on there.
It was at a Liberal Party event down in Cottesloe, so it was all the bandits. But no, mate, he was saying that anecdotally they're getting a lot of new interest in EVs. So I think the whole market, everyone's kind of now understanding that there is a lot of utility and financial utility in EVs. Jeez, it cost me $200 to fill up my car on the weekend. Far out. It was,
Yeah, what, mate, bloody, because I'm long Liontown. I'm short IGO to hedge it, just going into the quarterly. But bloody Liontown's back up at $2. That's creeped up to $2.30 in this market. And interesting, your old shop, PMET was down 6.5% today. So that's been a bit volatile. We're going to go through the commodities. We may as well start with lithium. And a bit of news out. Global Lithium getting a prepayment. You've got, we're waiting on quarters. I think Liontown IGO report on the same day. PLS yet to be out. But MinRes back at 620. What do we got? PLS at 590. As I said, Liontown $2.30, PMET dragging along at 56. Q2 released their maiden resource, mate. There's plenty going on. And is Ordinary, do you think the money's going to start flowing back into the junior ones there?
Well, it hasn't yet, mate, and that's probably the next leg. We've seen things like Galan, go up quite a bit on the back of they're getting into production relatively soon. Obviously, Liontown. Liontown has, mate, Liontown's, really killed it, and what they've nearly doubled in the last 6 months, haven't they?
Yeah.
So look at the chart. Mate, that thing's going incredibly well. But having said that, they're going to print a similar EBITDA number to South 32, I reckon. Like
Yeah.
they've got an unbelievable runway right now, and at $2,600 a ton, they're making a shitload of money, and that's it. I mean, that's the other thing that we always forget, and I have this philosophical conversation about producers is that you got to value them as options rather than as kind of discrete businesses, because I mean, I don't know when the great, we're talking about the valuation on Jansen Potash, for example, but I don't know when the entire capital of Pilgangoora is a good example. It took them 6 months or less than 3 months to pay back the entire capital expenditure, in the last lithium boom of Pilgangoora. But mate, I'm punting a few of these kind of smaller things, which I'm really enjoying. I put a note out on a few stocks. Jindalee Resources looks really interesting on a transaction basis. A bit of financial engineering going on there. They sold the project. They sold the project to a US SPAC for sort of circa 500 million US. The stock and the company's trading at a market cap of sort of circa 50-60 million bucks, depending on the time of day. I think there's a view that it's maybe a little come raise, and if that sort of comes to fruition and they're able to improve the balance sheet, then I think there's a real opportunity there to see that re-rate over the next 3 to 6, as well as another one that I'm surprised really hasn't copped a bid is Green Tech. Now that was a nearly $300-400 million company, if you remember, back in the last lithium boom, and they've actually done an incredible job of moving the business forward. The guys are just about to get to DFS stage. And they've got 2 projects that could be in production in the next 3 to 4 years. They're well and truly ahead of the likes of Cisco for Q2. Speaking of Q2, or Saskatchewan for PMET, and even the other one that's coming on market in Quebec and to the ASX is the old White Rock Lithium as well. That thing's going to have a market cap of $300 million, and Green Tech's, mate, they've got it's like a $20 million market cap. It just begs belief, to be frank. It's one of the ones. And full disclosure, I own some stock, so I'm talking my own book here. But to me, it feels like a really interesting opportunity at these kind of levels with an awesome sort of management team and board there. And then, mate, we actually had a desk briefing today from Nick Rathjen. Do you remember him from Green Tech?
Old FBM and now bloody OR3.
That's it, mate. All resources.
He was hitting me up to come on here. I'm like, big fella, it ain't free. So get the cobwebs out of the wallet if you want to come on for a yarn, and you're getting a free plug here. So the price has just gone up, Nick.
Mate, he presents really bloody well.
He's a good fella. Him and Robin too. I rate them too as a team.
Mate, and he's got Nev Power as chair too. So, mate, and they've got a really good team there. And I think everyone forgets they've actually got a really awesome asset next to MinRes as well, a lithium asset. And everyone's sort of focused on the gold stuff that they've got, but I reckon that little lithium asset's worth 30 to 40 in the right market as well, because it's right next to Mount Marion from memory, and it's quite high grade. So that's the thing everyone kind of forgets, is that lithium's got this really steep grade recovery curve that a lot of other sort of commodities don't. So if you're wanting to put spodumene into a plant, the high grade you've got, you get far better recoveries, and the economics are incredibly better. It is actually quite a lot better. So if you're putting 1.2, 1.3 in displacing kind of 1.1 1% kind of grade, it ends up being materially better for you. So it is worth a hell of a lot to the MinRes guys. So I could potentially see some sort of deal getting struck on that lithium asset. That's just not factored into the price there at all.
Yeah, interesting. On to PMET and Q2, like with that, now that Q2's come out with, I know it's an inferred resource of what do we I'll just read it out. 295 million tonne at 1.36%. Bloody big humdinger. And then you've got PMET at, what was it, 109 million tonne at 1.4%. So Q2's Cisco's come into the play now. PMET's obviously a lot further along with studies and everything, but do you think money's switching stocks there a bit? Do you think Q2's knocked it off its North American bloody pedestal a bit?
But it definitely looks like it. You know, you can see, I guess, two kind of very different approaches and obviously I worked at PMET, so I know the guys really well and the strategy behind it really well. It's well and truly an Australian style of running the business. They're focused on getting it into production and building a mine, whereas it looks like the Q2 guys just want to make this as big as humanly possible. Because, I mean, you know, PMET could spend another 50 to 100 million bucks on exploration and make this, you know, 500 million to 1 billion tons of spodumene concentrate if they really wanted to. But you know, there's extensions everywhere. It's a massive system, Saskatchewan, but the guys are really focused on bringing it into production. So it's just a difference in kind of, I guess, a difference in mentality. And it's very Canadian to go, you know, this is the biggest thing ever, and we've got 10 guys in the data room and everyone wants to invest in us. And that's exactly what I think, you know, I'm sure you've spoken your fair share of Canadians in the past. It's kind of what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah.
So,
do you think they'll chuck a CDI on the ASX soon enough? It seems a logical thing to do.
It's owned nearly, I think from last time I'd heard it was sort of 20-30% Australian owned as well. I know the guys at you know, it's another Blair Way, you know, business as well. So he sort of helped put that together. So
right. I didn't know he was involved in that. There you go.
Mate, funnily enough, his son's actually the IR guy. Really, really, really good bloke.
Yeah. Well, that's good because he got a bit burnt on the. Didn't he get margin called for the options or something on the margin called for when they were loading up on PMET, when PMET was going to be the biggest thing ever, when lithium was booming, then lithium crashed. So good to see him getting another crack.
Mate, I think he didn't have to sell any shares. I think he just had to put a bit more up as collateral from memory. Right. So so it wasn't a problem. I think there was a bit of scuttlebutt in the market at some point about that. But no, mate, I don't think he's sold any. He's had a few good wins actually. He's a director of that Felix Gold as well. Yeah. Which has had a cracking run, and it looks really interesting. Felix Gold, actually, we had them on the coming to the desk recently as well.
Yeah, I'm talking to the right bloke here because you worked for him. So
yeah. I've got a lot of time. I had a lot of time for Blair. He's a really, really, really good guy, and he's an interesting combination. You don't see it very often. A great bloke and really competent. You know, he's done an amazing job, you know, throughout sort of building these small cap companies up from very little. I think his next thing is sort of like a Canadian SPAC equivalent. You know, they're just raising some money to potentially put an asset into it at some point. Yeah.
Mate, may as well talk about all the commodities I rarely talk about, pardon the pun. Rare earths. Hasn't that had a big couple of days? On the back of that USA rare earths deal, couple of billion worth, that transaction, and on the back of that, VMM was up 28%. You had Meteoric conveniently, maybe inconveniently, went into trading alt to raise capital at a 0% discount, but then come out and is one of the rare stocks we see these days trading above the offer straight away. Yeah. So rare earths, especially those Brazilian clay ones, really coming into flavour this week. What's hot in the rare earths, mate?
Well, mate, they were. It sounded like there was a fund that sort of bid for 4.9% of the company. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, if we see any tape about exactly who that was. But
which one was that, mate?
Meteoric. So part of that raise. That was determined by someone, I think, sort of bid the company, and then they gave existing shareholders an opportunity to top up a bit. But VMM, Raf's done an amazing job there. You know, it's consistently been the obvious kind of pairs trade is long VMM, short MEI. But you know, I think you know them both. Far out, mate. The rare earth space looks crazy. I think we've sort of talked about this for quite a while. I was surprised that this didn't as part of the sort of broader kind of rearmament thematic that we're seeing, and reindustrialization thematic as part of the Iran war. I was surprised we didn't see some more of these stocks going up. So, I think the other the other sort of companies on the ASX have done copying a little bit of a bid here as well. But there's just sort of daylight between Linus and the next hopefuls. You've got Arafura there, still with a pretty big market cap, but not really doing a hell of a lot. It's just stayed at that 30-odd cent mark for a long time and haven't really rallied, but have raised a lot of capital along the way to get the project built. And then the clay ones out of the US, Brazil. BCM, VMM, and MEI, and then the carbonatite ones in St George as well. That looks bloody interesting too. St George mining, but the whole space. I'm really keen to see who actually ends up getting into production out of all of these projects out there. I think MEI is probably. I think they might say, I know Tunksy really well and Stu Gale really well as well. I think they may be in the. They may look back on the strategy of really focusing heavily only on the US, with a little bit of sort of sorrow, in the sense that I think they've been led down a garden path by different departments in the United States as to whether or not they're actually going to get some capital, and they've had sort of non-binding LOIs and things like that over the journey to the detriment of looking for other sort of forms of capital. But it'd be fantastic to see one of these things actually get into production and generate some money, because it's a hard space to get into, and these ionic clays are supposed to be the easier metallurgically to actually get into production and sell a product for. So, mate, I just want one of these things to get into production and generate free cash and some returns and dividends to shareholders.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm just looking like Arafura is what, $1.5 billion market cap. VMM's still 300 odd. Maybe that's a pairs trade for me. The bloody the Arafura short long into the Brazilian clays. Whoa, interesting. Yeah, got me thinking, bruz. Mate, what else? I've talked that much bloody gold and copper. I guess what? What are you focusing on coming out of the war? I guess commodity like with energy. You'd say energy's high, but then again, a lot of the coalies are pulled back. Like Whitehaven's back into the 7s. We obviously had the Kestrel deal with Yancoal. So there's a bit of it that's sort of disconnected a little bit. But what are you looking to bounce to get positioned now?
Mate, there's a few things. I think the obviously energy we've talked about ad nauseum, but I reckon helium. There's a few helium stocks out there that just seem mispriced at the moment. There's a Twitter account. I can't remember the handle off the top of my head. I'll send you a note and maybe you can chuck it in the edit. They're sort of talking about some serious shortages in helium at the moment. It's such a small percentage of the price of a semiconductor. So for those that don't know, helium is a fairly important input into creating sort of semiconductors. Obviously that are used in the AI space and everyday computers, and why the cost of computers gone up so much. And helium, a large percentage of the supply of helium's come offline because of what's happened in Qatar, and it's going to take 3 to 5 years to improve. And there isn't really much helium exposure out there. So again, talking my own book and a recent transaction that we did at GBA is D3 Energy. So D3E is the code. It's a really awesome stock with a fairly low market cap. So there's a lot of leverage here, but it's a bunch of guys that have built sort of companies before and sold them off at pretty substantial premiums. And this feels like a copy and paste of their kind of playbook in the past. And a $40 million market cap feels like you're sort of almost pricing it as option value. Like these I'm hearing pricing that's just ridiculous. Obviously, it's effectively priced as industrial minerals. So you don't get spot. There's no spot price chart out there, but people are talking, cargoes that are well in excess of $100. And, this thing can pull it out, we could potentially pull it out of the ground for single digits. So yeah, it's it is an interesting sort of story to be taking a look at the moment, and a commodity that I think people don't really understand the implications of, and the fact that the price of helium could go up 10,000%. It doesn't actually really impact the cost base of a semiconductor manufacturer, but it is an important part of it. It's a bit like the idea of the lithium prices could have gone to $10,000 a ton for SC6, and it actually wouldn't impact the price of an EV because it's such a small percentage of the total cost. And maybe your price goes up $100 or $200 per car or something. That was always
This has sparked my interest, Seward. Helium.
Yeah.
This is odd because there's why talk about the shit I already talk about? I want to talk about shit I don't know about. Helium. Right, DR3 on the watch list. What's another? I've heard another shell the other day.
D3E.
Oh, sorry, D3E. But what's that other shell? Bloody in the I think it's in there. Is it in the Gawler Creighton? That Prominence Energy. That's a local one. I think that's a bloody 5 mil shell. I'm going to hit these companies up to bloody come on and talk some helium. Because I know fucking nothing about it. So right, you've got me on a bloody mission. Right, I'm going to go get a helium company on. Why not?
Yeah, well, mate, I'll introduce you to guys at D3, and then Blue Star Helium's probably the other one that's got kind of a reasonable market cap, and they've raised a bunch of money, I think, via our friends at Canetoad recently too. So there's a few of them out there that have kind of got sort of blue sky optionality here. But it's one of those things that. And it's a really technical kind of commodity. So the guys that are involved in it just aren't spruikers, generally. So you just don't hear a hell of a lot about it. But it does feel like, mate, the helium space could be that kind of, shit. It was like tungsten. You remember tungsten? 6 months ago, everyone's going, oh, fuck, it's a small market, who cares, it doesn't matter. But now, it is, whether or not all these projects get up and running, probably not, is my kind of view.
No, who cares? As long as the share price triples, mate, I couldn't care. As long as I get in and out.
That's it. Mind the market, not the ore body.
Yeah, that's it. As long as they look after me. Right, I got them on the watch list now. Helium, right? Awesome. This could be the revival of the levered fund. The bloody Seward's helium bloody predictions. Oh, I love it, mate. We'll quickly touch on the basic stuff, mate. A lot of chat about copper at the moment. I'm obviously loaded to the gills in BTM for a North Queensland copper play. Yeah. But like on the back of obviously the sulfuric acid side of things, you've got questions. Oh, you got Kamoa-Kakula still bloody recovering. You've got reduction in everything coming out of bloody Chile at the moment. Like it just, and once you got Rick Rule on bloody YouTube going on and on about copper, which means he's heavily positioned in it. It just, but the copper thesis has been around for ages. It's at $6 a pound now, it looks like to be a bit of action in North Queensland happening. Mate, what are you thinking about the bloody wire metal?
Well, that's it, mate. I think, everyone's kind of talked about this impending 5-year, copper supply cliff that's coming, and it feels like we're sort of, almost there now. TCRCs are pretty bloody low at the moment, which gives you an indication of the demand for copper con out there, and it's sort of more focused on the mine side. We actually listened to the brand new CEO of a company called MinRex, MRR, not to be confused with MinRes.
Yep.
Max Perdo, I think you've met.
Yep.
Yeah, Maxi dialed in and gave us a little desk briefing update on things on his first day as CEO today. And he was saying that the conversations they've had with smelters have been increasingly more desperate. Speaking to different guys there in Serbia. So obviously there's I won't name names, in terms of the people, the smelters he's been talking to, but you can assume, you know, who's sort of doing the smelting in that part of the world. But they're becoming increasingly more interested in you know, what is, and he'd agree, what's a more difficult concentrate that would potentially be coming out of their project, a little higher in arsenic, and talking about, you know, payabilities that, you know, maybe 5 years ago would have been fanciful for a product that's got, you know, well in excess of 10% arsenic in the concentrate. So, you know, it shows you that demand is really high. You know, it's just there's no good copper stories out there. Now, we were involved a little bit, and I was involved a little bit in this company called Kyoko, which is Jer's new, you know, Jer O'Donovan, his new company, be listing in the next couple of weeks. And they got run over by demand, absolutely run over by demand for that IPO, even for kind of small, even for sort of small, you know, a small company that's looking at exploration. People just want some leverage to this copper thematic. You know, and the price is really high. It's $6 a pound. You could dig up half of, you know, half of Chile, and it'd be almost economic at the moment, you'd have to think.
Yeah, and can you imagine if, like, even just on a flow basis, I think I've harped on before, like, you look at some of these North Queensland assets, for instance, I think, True North's about 60 mil market cap. I think they got, 400,000 tonne of contained copper, Breakthrough's 30, they got 200,000 tonne. You got Carnaby at 150 million. They've probably been around the longest, just as developers. Like, if you compare that to a gold junior at the moment, because all the money went into gold juniors on a market cap basis, like, there's not much, like 200,000 tonne of copper, that's 10 years of production for AIC mines on the lifted bloody levels. So I'm waiting to see if money starts flowing from gold juniors into copper juniors on this thematic.
But it hasn't yet. I mean, the one that is worth actually pointing out, maybe for you, Maddie, and some of your listeners, is Eagle Mountain Mining.
Oh,
so
yeah, EM2.
EM2. They've just done that new deal a couple of days ago. I'm surprised that the share price hasn't rallied much further for a, you know, what, $10-15 million company. Yeah, they're effectively free carried into production, and, you know, you look at the way that deal's structured. That, you know, the Japanese want, you know, full offtake of the product, so they're keen to actually get their hands on. They're really keen to get their hands on the product themselves. So they want to move this into production and get it generating free cash, or at least generating some copper there. So I think you're right, Matt. We haven't seen the kind of, whether it's in lithium, or, I mean, arguably rare earths. You haven't seen these, you know, these companies trading on silly valuations just yet, like you have in the gold space.
That EM2, have you got any info on, like, is it permitted? Like, is there much hurdles to jump over to get that thing happening or not?
I don't, mate. I don't. I'm supposed to be catching up with the guys early next week, so maybe we can talk about it after I've had that conversation.
Oh, mate, you're bloody welcome on here anytime. Right, that's bloody. And Goldies, golds are more they're a trade at the moment. They're a chop trade. What they're doing, like your mates at Ben's, like that's sort of that $3 to $2 channel at the moment. You can bloody trade on, bloody. Talk, which I hold, that one's probably seems to outperform the rest at the moment. That seems to have a bit of stability with the big promotional train behind it. So what else you seeing in the gold market, mate?
I'm just a bit worried about some of these producers and you know, what the elevated price of copper means for someone that's kind of, you know, producing at a high all-in sustaining cost. You know, you've effectively had a doubling in the price of your energy, which is your second biggest input in a gold mine. I mean, like, I was hearing today that Volt have a 0.2 gram cutoff for King of the Hills. Like, you can't tell me that you're mining, you're putting, you know, 0.3, 0.4 gram a ton dirt through a plant is, you know, using diesel gensets at $3 a litre diesel is going to be all that economic. So, you know, I think the market can kind of, you know, look through it at the moment for a lot of these producers, but there'll be a bit of a reckoning, and you might see some capital pull out of that into the developers again, where there's going to be less of a problem around, you know, the immediate term, and you can kind of look through this what I think most people are expecting to be a relatively short-term increase in the price of, particularly diesel. So those kind of inputs. So
yeah, I think they're hybrid, aren't they? King of the Hills. They're on gas and batteries, but a lot of equipment to move that amount of dirt for the diesel.
Well, they're moving a shitload of dirt, so that I think that's the main input there.
But they've reached such an inflection point that you're seeing in the quarterly today that on the free cash side, because they've closed the hedge book and they're mining 0.5 gram dirt at such a big scale, they're just making so much money, and that's even after maiden dividend and the 40 mil into the buyback as well. Like it's. And like Regis, for instance, Regis did the reserve update, and they've obviously gone above their depletion at Duketon, but you look at like what's been added at Garden Well, it's like 1.8 gram dirt underground, which is similar to what Thunderbox mines, but it just seems like these companies, once they're there, it's the lowest cost option is for them is to just mine lower grade that's close, and they're making money when it's nearly $7,000 an ounce, making shitloads of money.
Wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So maybe I'm a little early on this trade, but I do. I'm a big fan of the junior end of the market, as you know, Maddie. So I think I'd be sort of throwing it into a few of these sort of these developers that you're not worried about the short-term blip on costs, but I just haven't heard anyone really talk about it. But maybe I guess you can kind of say that start of March to end of March blip for all these guys, which pulled sort of circa 20% of the market cap of the company off to today. It's probably I guess priced in now.
What are you thinking on the junior end? What are you liking?
Mate, I like there's a lot of really interesting junior explorers out there that I'm following. Ore Resources, I quite like the gold there, as well as that lithium that we talked about. Mate, Lefroy, Gold Arc, I really like those for a different reason. They're both kind of going to be cash generative relatively soon, and have got an increasingly interesting exploration portfolio and sort of development portfolio as well. Mate, the old Scotty Williamson.
He loves it.
I think it's a cracking gold opportunity as well. Now, that's a 100,000 plus ounce per annum gold mine in Western Australia, free milling, trading at a market cap of what, 200-300? Like shit, tell me what, tell me a company that trades on a better valuation than that. I understand there's issues around the major shareholder and liquidity, but geez, it does feel bloody cheap.
That helps it rip up very quick when there's only when only a quarter of the stock is available on free float, or I think 20% of the stock.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you go 220 market cap. Just looking at the chart now, it's pulled back a bit. So, mate, I think that looks awesome. You could buy that all day, every day, and people forget that it's not just the couple million ounces of free milling gold. You've got some sort of semi-refractory stuff there as well in Wilson's, which could potentially add other tonnage. I wouldn't be surprised if you see this as a 200,000 ounce per annum mine in 3 to 5 years time.
Yeah.
But you look at Rocks started. When I first started following Rocks, that was a sub 100,000 ounce per annum mine. But that'll in the fullness of time, that'll get well and truly over 150,000 ounces per annum is my view. So no, I'm liking some of these smaller things, and we talked about Minrex as well today. MRR, they've got a little bit of copper, a little bit mainly gold, a little copper, a little silver as well in the project. That's got an incredibly small EV, and it's well cashed up. So you're not walking into a cap raise like you can do with a lot of these other smaller things as well, and got a really good management team. So Max Perdo is fantastic. You look at the board, it's Glenn Whitten. James, I forget his last name. I'm gonna get an angry text from James now as well.
I'd love to edit this out, but I'm not going to either. So I've got to get the kids from school.
Oh dear, James Pearce and Ian Shackleton on the board, and the guys have been looking for new assets for a long, long time. And they've finally found a cracking one in Serbia, and it looks like that, and that had They did a PA on that a little while ago, and the guys are going through a almost 6,000 meter drill program of extensional work and infill drilling around their project at the moment, and sort of regional exploration success as well. And there's Jin's operations in that part of the world, and mate, there's going to be a shitload of additional kind of news flow coming, as well as I think improvement in the economics on the project too, on the back of what we talked about in terms of payability is getting better for copper and gold cons, and as well as obviously they did it at a sub 2,000 US dollar an ounce gold price. Like, all you have to do is plug today's gold price through a lot of this stuff, and even if you plug higher energy prices, the economics is so robust. And I think people in the investment community have gotten far more comfortable with Serbia as well. Obviously, Rio had those issues there, but Zijin's done a fantastic job in the region. Dundee's done an amazing job in the region. Staveley's got a cracking project there as well. So I think they've done a good job of improving the Balkans as a mining jurisdiction. What is it? Adriatic. That was another cracking project that's got up and running. It's just showing you far more successes in the region than failures, and I think the discount's probably unfair on that jurisdiction. It's an up and coming mining jurisdiction.
Yeah. Oh, mate, very good. I've added heaps of bloody price alerts and shit to the watch list on the back of this, mate. Right, I'm getting into. I've got to get into. I'm going left field and having a look at helium. I'm going to get a helium MD on. Right, all because of you, mate. Thanks for being Australia's #1 supporter of LEVRD, mate. You're an absolute legend. Love our chats.
I am #1 supporter of Matty Michael, and I can see the
big distance to second, Cobb.
I know you're a big rugby league man, but we got to shout out the Western Force for their win against the Crusaders on Saturday as well.
Oh, you got how'd old Zach Lomax go?
Yeah, mate, he did all right. It was one of those, we sort of we were down. I think the Force had sort of been guilty of playing 60 minutes of footy and then letting it go for the last 20, where we probably did the opposite on Saturday. A few of the UWA boys now in the squad. Jack Daly's there as well, and we went down after our game against Pally, yeah, mate, the guys did a cracking job, and it's good to see West Australian rugby back up and running. I caught up with went to training last night, and there's the junior Perth Bears training next to us at the moment. So NRL's coming.
Oh, mate, they'll be bloody. I'm going to get behind them. I'll get behind them when Manly's not playing here. So yeah, good stuff, mate. Right, I better get this out before bloody school pickup, mate. But mate, thanks for all the steers in different directions. Love your work, mate.
Always happy to chat lots of different stuff.
Jeez, mate, Jindalee should be putting you on the ticket after that plug you give them. Far out.
I do like the Jindalee guys, mate. They're good. We've worked with them in the past, so they're a good GBA client, and they've done a cracking job. It's a really awesome project. I think more people should be looking at the company.
Good work, mate. Righto, bros. You take it easy. I'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers, mate.
See you soon.